Do you need social media as an author in 2026? Am I using social media as an author? Well, for me, the answer is barely. And for other people, I think it's going to depend on where you are in your career. And that's what I would like to talk about. So, hey, everybody, welcome to Keep Writing. I'm James, and I'm a science fiction writer with 14 novels now under my belt, three in the pipeline. And I'm also the chair of a local writers group and a member of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association. So, as I start this video, I want to caveat everything by saying I'm a science fiction writer who also writes some fantasy, some slipstream, some literary. I do not write in genres that are well suited to capitalizing on social media to find readers. And so that's really what I'm talking about in this video. There are other genres that do very well with social media, and their readers are looking for their activity on social media. They're going to social media or certain channels specifically looking for new writers to follow. Book Talk on TikTok is does very well for romance writers, writers of like romantasy, things like that. I am not one of those writers, so keep that in mind as you get into this video. I have a long history with social media, and for me, it goes back to like when I think about the first times I even got on the internet, it was CompuServe, America Online. You had to dial up, and then there was always kind of a grid of things that you could do once you got there. And one of them was almost always chat. As I think back to those times, like graduating from that, which felt like you were just kind of like jumping into the stream of people talking because every minute that you spent online cost money, and my mom wasn't going to let me stay online for any period of time. Plus, other people wanted to use the phone. Then going to AOL, which was the same thing, but had more of these various chat rooms based on different topics. And then when Web 2.0 came along, the whole idea was that we're going to add engagement to every website that's out there. So all of a sudden, all these websites started having comment sections and more forums were popping up. All of that I've been able to kind of grow with and watch that progress over time. Same thing with Usenet and other groups that I've been a part of. When I think about what it is that drew me towards things like that, it was almost always just fear of missing out. Because the fact is, I don't actually like to talk that much online. I don't like to talk with people that I don't actually know who they are or I'm not looking at in a way where I can actually tell, feedback. For me, for whatever reason, like maybe this is, PTSD from my first marriage, but I have a really hard time even reading a text without reading it or reading something in text that's addressed to me without reading it in a very negative tone of voice. Like I have to actively think that like, okay, this person is not thinking the worst. This person is not angry. They could have all this other stuff going on behind the screen. And so just chill out. And in my house, when I was growing up, like we were not the kind of household that argued openly about anything. Like it was the kind of house where things just kind of simmered underneath the surface until there was kind of an explosion. And then one of my parents would slam the door and leave. And there was never very much working out or discussing of anything. So in general, conflict managed through like talking like this is not fun for me. and and I definitely don't go looking for it online. So as I came up through, first discovering the internet, like there's all this cool stuff you can read about, and most of the things that were on, you know, things like Usenet, which was basically kind of email based, where people were, emailing into listservs, and that those conversations would appear there. It was often people that were very knowledgeable about a subject, like very detailed, like you could learn something when you were reading that. And so from the very beginning, I got sucked into that kind of stuff because it was basically just opening myself up to whatever, cool thing I might read. Well, that progressed to websites, and as these comments, started appearing, I didn't realize it at the time, but you were moving from the website being something interesting that you wanted to read about, like either the person who was sharing their life or the whatever topic it was they were talking about. And then people would start commenting. And I don't know when the transition happened, but it started where I wanted to read the comments more than I wanted to really interact with the article. Maybe it was all of the Gawker websites that popped up in the early 2005 to 2010, somewhere in there, where the comment sections were really active and people were very, angry and whatnot. Like, it was just all about that dopamine hit when you read a comment. And then that progressed to sites like Dig and Slashdot, which were not as much that way, but now Reddit is very much that way. People have arguments back and forth. As the personal platform started to come into being, like, Twitter, I first started using Twitter when it was actually text messaging and still didn't really get it. I didn't like talking to people through that medium. Like, if I was going to text somebody, I would text them. And I've always had the feeling where if I text somebody, like, I hate being left on read, you know? Like, you have to go back and look at the phone constantly to see if somebody got back to you. That has gotten much better with time, but I didn't realize, like, how much anxiety that caused me back in the day, especially when dating and you first met somebody. Like, it was just the worst. So the personal websites started advancing as well, like where, Twitter and then MySpace or Friendster, and it used to be when you look at someone's MySpace account, you would have an idea kind of immediately of what this person was like because you could customize so many things on MySpace. Well, then Facebook came along, and also MySpace was just open. Anybody could sign up for it. And then Facebook came along and it was only open to college students at the time and only certain colleges. And I worked at a college, so I had a .edu email address, and so I could get an account with Facebook. And Facebook kind of changed the game because you couldn't edit anything about the template. It all looked pretty much the same. And what I didn't realize at the time, and Twitter kind of did the same thing, you could have like really crazy takes or really off the wall things people were being said, and it all looked somewhat normalized because it was all fit into the same template and made to look the same way. And that definitely changed over time, but that is how it started, and I think that's what drew a lot of people to, Facebook. Like MySpace, I think people were still kind of overwhelmed by, like, a how connections were going to work, and then the fact that you could edit things just added like an extra layer of stuff you had to, figure out as you were using it. There was a little bit more of a barrier to entry. But Facebook was just like make an account. And then once it created this whole dimension of meet a person, like barely know them, but ask to friend them on Facebook. And now it's like you have access to all of their family photos. And that was a super weird new thing. And looking back on it, now we've come full circle, I think, on realizing how online privacy works and why you wouldn't want to give all those photos up to Facebook, now Meta. But back then it was just open season and it really like wasn't cool. I look back on that. Like I recently, I'll get to this, but I went through and like deleted all the photos off my personal Facebook account. And I did not realize, like, going back to, the 2010s and that time period between like 2008 and 2010, just uploading everything to Facebook. And I had made a lot of that private in the past, but it was still available. I mean, it's still on available to Facebook. And I promise I'm going somewhere with this. But so this addiction has grown over time with social media. And in 2016, when I started really getting involved with the writer community on Facebook, I got a lot of value out of Facebook. Like the author groups that started up, like a lot of like, in fact, I moved with one group of people that had started on Kboards, which still exists, kboards.com, where a lot of writers were talking about independent publishing. And some people jumped over to Facebook and a Facebook group. And I think the network effect of Facebook worked so much better there than on this other, .com website. And now we know that that's because of all the network effects that Facebook has. But you just all of a sudden had like, I'm interested in this thing, which at the time was independent publishing. All these other people can join. Facebook is actively trying to recruit people into the group. And then the same thing where it's trying to get you to friend all these other people as well that are part of the group. And so I made a lot of great connections there, like friends that I still have to this day, but that has steadily declined. And I want to say it's like just recently a thing happened where I had two Facebook accounts. So I had my personal Facebook account, which is the one I joined with under my actual name. And then I made one for my author account. And gradually, like Facebook at the time didn't want you to do that. And so I moved over more and more to the author account, which is where I was kind of interacting with Facebook because I had the author page and all the other stuff over there. And recently I logged back into my like real person account. And I mean, Facebook now allows you to do this pretty easily. And I was already getting this from like posts on the author account where it felt like it was just trying to feed me group after group after group. And part of it is I would unfollow a lot of things because I didn't want Facebook to try and market to me personally. Like I'd follow a lot of author things, but nothing else. And I started noticing that I was just getting, it was like whack-a-mole. I would just get one new group after another, and it started feeling like they were generated, like they weren't even real. Because I would go look at them, and their posts really felt very generic and empty, and the people interacting with them, a lot of them looked fake, and with the rise of fake accounts on Facebook that has continued since 2016, it all just felt very like, why am I even looking at this? It's providing me no value whatsoever. And so getting on my personal one again, and the thing about having Facebook for a long period of time, or even just social media, is there are different people from different groups in my life that are on there. And there's not a good way to separate them. Like you can Facebook has tools sort of to do it, but it's really not super intuitive. And I just don't have time to go through like everybody in my friends list, which is like 1,000 people at this point, and separate them into groups and then organize every post I might make by that group that I want to show it to. Especially for personal stuff where I might be the idea would be to share things about my life that I want to, you know, share with other people. And it has just become so like A, polarized, and B, full of AI slop that, and people are sharing it. And then when you point out to them, like, hey, this is AI, like, were you aware of that? They just don't care. Like, well, I thought that was a good sentiment, so I liked it. Okay. Well, I mean, I don't want to spend my life interacting with things that weren't even created by a human when it's bad enough that a lot of stuff like a lot of spam is created by humans anyway, and at least I can recognize it's spam and not being auto generated, millions of them a second. Maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but we're getting close. and and I only have so much time in my day. And then I made the mistake of commenting on something that a friend of mine had posted, and I didn't realize that it was making the rounds of one side of media, and all these people jumped on me and told me I was stupid, which is fine. I get told I'm stupid all the time, but I just realized like I don't need this, and there's really nothing good. I wasn't feeling good when I looked at it. So maybe it felt extreme, but I went ahead and deleted that Facebook account. And Facebook does this thing where you have to wait 30 days before they will actually delete the account. I guess another thing that had happened was a person I know was getting a new job as a pharmacy tech. And that's cool because it was a career change for them and moving in a positive direction. And I wrote, like, I would gladly buy drugs from you. And Facebook flagged me as that being like drug buying behavior, which, okay, I guess it is. And so I got like I have never been put on probation on my Facebook account ever, and they did that as well. And and so I just realized that like these interactions don't work for me. And the positives that I've gotten out of Facebook have moved to other places. And for me, like I kind of liken a lot of social media to and Web 2.0 as it moved into platforms, like Twitter, now X, Facebook, Instagram. I mean, the consolidation that has happened where I say Facebook, but really it's Meta, like everything that falls under between Instagram and Facebook and then TikTok, which I was never a big user of TikTok or Instagram anyway, because those really felt like just vapid scrolling to me. Facebook at least some supposedly had this ability to reconnect with people that I knew, and they were kind of holding me hostage that way. Like this information about my life that I had collected was being held hostage, but increasingly the things I was seeing on there felt like just sort of 90s McDonald's that had lots of color and was fun to interact with to like 2025 McDonald's, which is very tan and gray, and when the CEO like eats a hamburger in a video, he calls it a food product and not a hamburger. Like there's just nothing I don't feel good when I look at it. And I also feel like it's just even that now that it was bad enough when it was content creators who are being pulled into the algorithm to make things that are going to satisfy the algorithm to continue engagement. But now it's even less of that because AI is creating a lot of those things. And part of that interaction I had where people were calling me stupid as well, I realized that like even as I want to argue about this, I was trying to have a conversation about it to begin with, but everything about the way Facebook frames that is both from an us versus them perspective. It doesn't make it easy to actually comment or talk about anything from the way the comments are set up on Facebook. The fact that people can upvote or downvote in certain ways turns everything into a game. And it's all just set up to increase engagement, like to make you angry and want to keep going back to the thing that's like needling at your mind. And for me, because I don't like that kind of, you know, negative engagement, that thing that's making me angry. And I'll admit, like, I have a hard time reading text if I'm angry. Like I said, I'll see it in that I'll read it in my internal voice and an angry voice. I want to respond immediately, and then I'll typically not frame an argument in a great way, which is just like being in an argument with somebody and responding angrily, as opposed to being able to step back and think about what you wanted to say in a calm way and come back to it and have an actual conversation, or even just focus on the ways that we are similar rather than a platform that drives us to focus on the ways that we are different. And you start to realize that everything that is happening on that platform is to the benefit of the platform. It does not benefit you as a person, you interacting with people you know. All it does is reinforce opinions that maybe you already have, or maybe it's the platform trying to push those opinions to you through algorithms or advertising or things that were pushed by other media platforms onto onto the platform using that algorithm. And so I just don't want to be part of that. Really, I've reached a point where I'm done with it, but I also recognize that if you're starting out early in your career, like I already have established relationships that I can, look to, and it can be I think it's a lot harder these days to do that, but like I've talked about in some other videos, I think there are still ways to do that. But for me, I am totally moving away from Meta product. Now I have another friend that is really good at Instagram, and he's got a lot of followers on Instagram, like I want to say hundreds of thousands, and has used that to, drive his career as a writer. But a lot of that interaction is about Instagram and questions on Instagram and interactions on Instagram, not necessarily about people pulling in wanting to buy his books. And so that conversion that happens is always very difficult. And it's about context, really. I mean, even thinking about, I made a couple of videos just recently about some Lego sets that I liked, or not Lego sets, and doing a thing there on this channel that would get more engagement because of, the Lego thing that I was interested in, which I made it because I like that, but also I didn't think there was anything else out there like that. But it's going to get more attention than the author stuff. and and I started this channel and this podcast because I wanted to talk about author things and things with my career. And that's just an aspect of, like, I think of this sort of like, a video blog sharing things, and that's part of what I'm working on. But I don't expect those people to convert to buying books. I don't expect them to interact with me as a writer. And I think that's always an important distinction to keep in mind. Like, even if as a writer using Facebook or other meta products to advertise, that's even a separate channel than what you might be doing as a writer connecting with people on one of those platforms. Like, if you were friends with somebody or talking to people on Facebook or whatever, or post things that then people interact with, they're posting with it in that very narrow channel. They're not necessarily there to buy books or even think about you as an author. They're thinking about you as a person who posts content that they will engage with within the framework of what that platform is. And those platforms definitely have certain kinds of character and want certain things, as we know. Instagram wants a certain kind of interaction. TikTok rewards certain kinds of things in videos, the way people talk, how fast they talk. If you do something like, I purposefully try not to talk very fast when I do these videos, and that is going against what YouTube is trying to encourage you to do. But I kind of don't care because I don't need to monetize this, and I sort of don't want to. I don't want to be pulled in a direction where I need to somehow convert this thing into selling stuff. Like, it's much better to be in the context of advertising to somebody, advertising the book to them within the context of what the book is, or you as a writer who wrote the book, and you're asking them to evaluate the book on the book's merits or the ad's merits, and at least get them to click to go look at the Amazon page where the context is fully, this book is cool, buy this book, not, I like James, I'll take a look at his book because I like him. One of the things I've really learned over the years is, if I tell somebody I'm a writer and, oh, what's your book? I mean, the first thing I will ask them is, do you like science fiction? Oh yeah, I like science fiction. Well, cool. Do you like hard science fiction? Like, what writers do you like? Because I don't want to lead somebody to my work if they don't like science fiction. Because that's not like, Amazon will not reward that interaction. Like, every time somebody goes to your Amazon page, it's an A/B test of where they came from and do they buy. And if they don't buy, then it's going to, determine, like, that's a weight against that product, unfortunately, it's a product, right? And so that product didn't convert. So I'm not going to show it if I have a choice between a product that does convert and one that doesn't, because Amazon's goal is to sell books, not to help promote you, unless you're paying them, which then maybe they're trying to make money, but they're still going to, they want to create those runaway bestsellers, the Matt Dinnemans of the world that they don't have to work hard to promote, and the network effect, takes hold, and now that thing is making a lot of money versus, the smaller fry that aren't making as much money like that. So context, I think, in social media really matters. And as a writer, if you're trying to get these, I think it is very important to make connections with other writers, talk to them, learn from them. And for me, at least, in most of the, communities that I'm interacting with, that has moved to Discord. I still don't like Discord very much because, like I've said before, like you can somewhat search on Discord, but still all those interactions are hidden. And you don't really know what that community is like until you join it and have a chance to kind of observe it for a while. And there are communities that are, at the 100 to 200 people level, which are kind of my favorite, smaller groups, which are very insulated. And then these huge groups that I don't even know how people get meaningful interaction out of those groups because they move so fast and the conversation happens so fast that I don't know how you can even take part in that because I don't have time to look at it. Also, that is so much of what comes back to me in making decisions about where I want to spend my time because I just don't have time to look at these things. And if there's one lessons I've learned is that I need to spend my time writing, not interacting with people on a platform because I'm benefiting the platform when I do that. I'm not converting to sales is really what it comes down to. Now those interactions might help you in other ways. I've kept in contact with people and one of the things I have done as I move away from these platforms is I ask for people's email addresses. I ask for their phone number. I text them. I call them. I am really trying to make an effort to call and talk to people that way because to me that's a lot more meaningful. I'd much rather just talk to someone than have this sort of like or drive by interaction or happy birthday. And yeah, maybe that makes people feel good and that I'm still alive, but it's still like every little one of those is a mental weight that you're carrying. I don't know that our brains were actually meant to do that. And so as you move through different phases of your life, it's fine to let those other ones go. If something pops up and you think about someone and you want to, touch base with them and see how they're doing, I think to me, I reach out to them and I want to call them or talk to them. I really just see no value anymore in like having some kind of conversation on Facebook or even going to Facebook to see if that person is still alive. Like it's just not the same thing to me. I know I've got friends that like really find value in it and that's great. It just doesn't it's not working for me, especially when I know my time is better spent writing. And so that gets to the other place I've been spending way too much time and I'll just admit I'm actively addicted to it is Reddit. Reddit has sort of the same, it's a platform people can comment on, they can post things. And because I've always been like attracted to that, like getting new information, which I suppose is also a part of a fear of missing out. I like a site, I've always liked blogs for that reason that you can go there and see different things that people have found. It used to be the blog was curated by a person. And so you got a sense of what they liked or didn't like. Also, they tend to be pretty focused on certain topics. Reddit has subsumed all that with subreddits, and they've basically sucked in the idea of forums, and now those things are all subreddits. And so there are certain subreddits that you can interact with and just see things related to that. And that has been super useful. Like I've gotten so much value out of the veterans subreddits that are out there. I really like the army subreddit because it just shows me that like soldiers never change. And and I think it's super cool now. Like I wish when I had first even enlisted, back when I was 17 years old, if I had had the opportunity to talk to other people in the army, that would have changed my career, just maybe even the trajectory of my life so much. And that is available to people now, which I think is amazing. It is truly amazing. And so that is a good thing, but that good thing is constantly being embattled by currently AI bots, like repost bots, like people that are trying to game it because there's a certain amount of probably message shaping and advertising that is always happening on the platform. And unfortunately, it's just not very transparent right now. So I really hate the feeling when I get into something, reading it, especially some personal thing somebody posted and people are commenting on it. And you start to realize, like midway through, when you've spent 3 minutes reading it, that, oh, this is fake. This is fake. Why did I even? This is stupid. And I've tried different like plugins that will actually recognize when something is, either a repost or AI related or not. and Reddit will flag me at, like, it flags my account as, because that plugin is trying to like search Reddit and see if something else is like that. Well, then my account, like, I get locked out of Reddit because I'm trying to use that tool. And so that's very frustrating. But that's been helpful because when Reddit locks me out, I can't use Reddit. And so I don't think I'm alone in this feeling. And I don't like that the whole way Reddit is also set up is that it's much easier just to scroll the headline or the picture related to the headline and then jump from whatever was in that headline or picture or photo to hook you and then pull you into the comments, and you didn't even go and read the thing that it was based on. And so often you'll read comments, and now even that people can, like, pay money to highlight certain comments or give them awards or things like that. And it's interesting in your brain how much like a casino that is, where just on like Facebook, when you get some sort of notification or a certain thing gets upvoted or enough engagement, well, now your brain starts doing this automatic thing where I feel like I've been programmed to seek that out. Like I know I have. Like just like YouTube and people upvoting something, you're programmed to, oh, this thing got more upvotes, or this thing is good because it got more upvotes. Same thing on Reddit. And oh, maybe I should believe this person more because they got an award. Well, depending on where that is, that's actively being gamed, you know? And so you have to spend mental energy reading it, thinking about it. And while that's happening, there's thousands of other comments that are happening. And that is a lot of mental weight. And I know this, and I still keep looking at it. And so I'm actively trying to move away from that. So the through line for me with Facebook and Reddit is that I'm not connecting with people. At least I'm not connecting with people in any sort of meaningful way that makes my life better, that helps me feel connected, that teaches me new things through those connections. And then the same thing with Reddit, where I feel like I'm not learning anything new. In fact, it is a false sort of learning because it's giving me fake things. Every time I turn around, like I was saying, you get an AI post or a repost, or you don't know if comments are real or not, or the comments are completely at odds with whatever the original post was. And it takes mental energy and time to even engage with it and try and figure out what it is. And all those things just make me tired and sap my energy to do other work and just steal time. It's actively stealing time from me. So increasingly, I feel like these platforms should pay us to interact with them because they are stealing our time from us. They are making a promise that they can provide these things: connection with our friends, continuity of our lives, access to people across the world. And they provide some of that, sort of, but it's just an increasingly bad product. And if there were options out there, if it wasn't a complete monopoly across all of these different platforms, we could probably go somewhere different, but we can't. And nobody's going to jump in and change it anytime soon. And that's frustrating. And also, I can't say that as a writer, Reddit has done anything. There are definitely, like, it has been useful to read a lot of the big subreddits related to, science fiction is not nearly as big as the fantasy subreddit. It's really interesting to read, reader feedback, which feels relatively unfiltered. It's better than Goodreads, which, Goodreads is another Amazon product, but people have a different kind of rating system on Goodreads. And I feel like Goodreads encourages people to be a lot more critical than they might be on the fantasy and science fiction subreddits, where you can see people coming into it who are not big science fiction readers or not big fantasy readers. And you really get that kind of unfiltered, well, I liked this because of this, or I liked this because of the story, or I liked, I didn't come into this, people discovering a writer for the first time and like, I really liked this. And then people will be like, oh, well, these are all the cool things that that writer was doing in addition to just being a fun story. Like, I don't like it if somebody comes in and, I like Brandon Sanderson, and people immediately will jump on them and say, well, he's a crappy writer and blah, blah, blah. And well, like all those things are debatable, right? And I'd like to do a video about that later, but that you can watch that play out too, which is unfortunate. But there are definitely, you got to get that sense of how that churn happened. And I think that's useful as a writer. There are other writing subreddits, which I have not interacted with as much, where people will try to start writers groups. And I wonder how many of those go on to continue existing, because it seems pretty easy to jump in there and say, hey, I'd like to start a writers group, easily create something on Discord, and then, you're off to the races, as opposed to meeting in person like I did for a long time. with my writers group, and then now we meet on Zoom. There's organization to it, there's rules to it. So I don't know. But I'm not when it comes to like my work, I just feel it's hard to know where to direct people. I feel like my energy and what I would tell a new writer that your energy is best devoted just to writing and having a number of things that you finish that then you could try to like once you do have that conversation with someone like you know, join one of these Discord groups or other groups I might not be aware of. They're out there. I would love to hear about them. Then you start saying, like, hey, I have like, it's one thing to say I'm writing a trilogy. Like, everybody is writing a book, everybody is writing a trilogy. But to say, like, I have this, it's done. Can somebody recommend a publisher I should talk with? Or can somebody talk to me about, like, how would I connect with, an editor that might get me other connections? And one thing I will say is don't spend money right off the bat. Try and get those connections. If you interact with a group and people, know, like, and trust you, then they will typically want to help you and at least maybe give you a leg up to help you at least submit something to, you know, an editor they know at a publication, or maybe help you even with just the submission process. Magazines have a pretty specific submission process most of the time, or they're open or closed to submissions at different times. And so people can help you with that. And my experience has been in these smaller groups, people are very open to wanting to help each other. It's in the bigger groups where a lot of that us versus them, in group, out group dynamics come to play because remember the platform doesn't want you to be nice to each other. So definitely seeking out those smaller groups is very, very helpful. So for me, I'm really reducing the amount of interaction I'm trying to have with these other platforms. I really just want to create versus consume is what it comes down to. Like where I'm at in my career, I have opportunities. I need to actually use those opportunities. It's one thing to know an editor, but if you don't have a thing to show them, then I'm just another writer who's out there that wrote a thing a while ago. Oh yeah, I like that thing, but have you written anything recently? And that's what it always comes back to. Who cares how much you post on social media? Like people get pretty tired of that over time. And there are a lot of, well-known writers who have really burned a lot of bridges with that and with having a lot of followers and just not finishing series or not writing more series. And that's what readers want. They want things to read. They're not coming to social media. If they come to social media to seek you out, I think it's because they want information about the thing you wrote. They don't there's kind of a mechanism I think in the back of a reader's mind if you're posting a bunch of stuff that is not writing and they don't care about the thing that you're posting about, you're diminishing their likability, their feelings of goodwill toward you because you're not doing the thing that they came to you because they wanted. They want to know when the next book is going to come out. And if you're posting about some other, gardening or something, well, that's cool, but I would also like to know when the book is going to come out. Because unfortunately, you do reach a point where, as a writer, at least, like everything you're doing is sort of advertising, right? And so you can do two sets of, you know, a profile as the writer and a profile as a person. There are definitely writers that are just all about opinions and other things like that. And quite honestly, I'm tired of reading opinions. If I want to read an opinion from an expert that I feel has the expertise to speak on a subject, I will go seek them out. And I'm not interested in a feed that is just giving me interactions back and forth about, quite honestly, things that are imperfect information all the time that also don't have the benefit of time to know how we should have felt about it. Like there are obviously things in real time that are happening. And I'm sort of, I'm somewhat interested in what people have to say, but for the most part, I'm not. I would like to know what is happening and find sources that will give that to me. And I'm because so much news is just opinion and news about opinion, and you find out that the kernel of the thing was not actually even really news. I'm just so burnt out on that that I don't need it in my mind. And so I'm moving away from those things. I'm definitely not burying my head in the sand, but I definitely have felt that social media just does not help me consume or understand or make sense of the world in that way. And just because someone is a writer and maybe they're good at this one set of things, that doesn't mean their opinion on anything else matters. And I don't think anybody cares ultimately about my opinion on something either. So if we're together and we're having a conversation, we can talk about it. I can have conversations with people I disagree with if I understand where they're coming from and I feel that they're consistent. But also because of the way social media just seems to change and people change their opinions based on the wind, I don't have time for that. So So that's also a big piece of why I'm moving away from that in 2026. Maybe that will change. I don't know. I'm not excited about forcing people into identity verification online, but I do think that there could be channels where there could be identity verification and then you could go interact with something as yourself. And maybe there will be more genteel interactions if we know who you are. But I actually don't think that's true because there are plenty of people that interact as themselves and are still jerks. and and really benefit from being jerks. Like that is their brand and people think they're awesome because they're jerks. Cool. That's just not what I take enjoyment from. So what I could recommend for me personally and where I'm at in my career, like I said, I am just focused on trying to create things, post things that I've created. I'm moving more to like non-algorithmic social media. So, I would like to be available, I guess, or the things if you make something, it is nice to get a little bit of interaction with it, but there's also a point where too much interaction gets scary. And like I have a friend who just recently made a thing that I think originally was on Threads and then got a lot of started getting a little traction, got to the point where it was actually being copied to different platforms and he was getting a lot more attention than he wanted. And that's always, I think, the sort of scary downside of something that you make. If it gets misinterpreted or it's on a platform, like YouTube, where it could blow up. And depending on what it was that you made, is that really something you want it to be out there? So what is the audience that you're aiming toward? If this blows up, I'll be very surprised. And I try not to ever say anything that makes me look too stupid. But if I say something stupid, it's because I hope we can all benefit from me being stupid. I would hope that you can benefit. Like James said, this thing that whatever pointed out, he learned from, he had this experience, he learned from it, he's sharing it. And hopefully you don't have the difficult time that I did. That's what I want to get out of this whole podcast. This whole reason I'm doing this. Talking it out helps me understand the things that I'm working through and to be honest, like this is a topic that I'm doing off the cuff, but I have a lot of notes because I've been trying to figure it out over time. Why have I been so addicted to this? Like what is the thing that pulled me into it from the beginning? Why is fear of missing out such a strong attractor for me personally? Going back to Gmail being like a closed beta that you could only get into it if you knew people. And so I knew people so I could get in and I have one of the my full name is a Gmail email address, which now really doesn't matter as much as it did back in the day. But I've been part of communities that had, people that went on to do pretty awesome stuff and make companies and sell companies. And that was awesome. But also the fear of missing out of not being part of it led me to kind of just not do my own thing. And if I could say anything to you, like, don't be afraid of doing your own thing and if it's cool, people will be attracted to it. Like you won't need social media as much as you might think you do because you're doing a cool thing. And the people that are attracted to you will find you authentically and they will like you because of the thing you're doing, whether it's writing or art or being in the community or whatever it is. They will like you for the right reasons. They won't be drawn to you because an algorithm told them to like you. And then they might say dumb things or rude things or mean things just because the algorithm put something in front of them and they don't understand any of the context behind it. And so they give their opinion. And I don't care about those opinions anymore. So, yeah. So you can find me. Yeah, I'm doing more things on Mastodon. I'm cross posting these videos as well to PixelFed, which is or PeerTube, which is a federated version of YouTube. And so the things are like basically it leaves YouTube and goes and exists out on other servers. So if YouTube ever goes down, which is certainly possible, the work I've done will continue to exist and be hosted in places. Same thing with the audio. I currently use Substack as a way to like I didn't even get into Substack. Substack kind of feels like LinkedIn at this point. A lot of people like really trying to be sound smart, but I don't have time to read all of their pseudo intellectual newsletters. And it's the same sort of thing. Like, Substack is trying to put it in front of you and get you to interact with it. And the minute you log into it, they want you to pay for it, which I just don't have time or money for all of that. But currently it works as a hosting service for for podcasts and audio. So I'm using it for that. But I'm also self-hosting audio. So if I needed to, I could shift to the RSS feed for the audio. And that's really trying to make sure that things are available, that if somebody likes me as being a writer, they could seek out these other things that I've done and hopefully find it helpful and not be beholden to being on YouTube, the YouTube algorithm, or any other algorithm that is out there. Because ultimately, that's what it comes down to, right? If you're doing a thing on someone's platform, you are they're serving them, not yourself. And you have to keep that in mind. I think you have to have a really strong sense of what it is you want to do. And if you're going into it to be a, YouTuber or an Instagram content creator or whatever, you got to chase that algorithm because that's where the dollars are. And that's not where I want my dollars to come from. So I hope this is helpful. If there are other writing communities, especially or communities that have been useful, I would love to hear about them. Because right now, like I've said, Discord feels like the place, but also Discord, there's been rumblings as they try to introduce ID verification and things like that, which that all feels like it's on the back end, but and not on the front end of the groups you're interacting with. But still, there are plenty of reasons that you would want to interact with one of those places anonymously. So it's always a thing to keep in mind. We don't know where surveillance is going. Well, we do know where surveillance is going. It's inevitable. And so the right to be private and to be anonymous, maybe you never actually had that in your smaller community and it was not a thing that we could actually expect from the greater world, but it was a promise for a while. And I wonder if it's going to continue existing that way. So anyway, that's a subject for another video. Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope this was useful in some small way to kind of see my thought process on this and what I'm what I'm trying to work towards, which is mental clarity that allows me to get more work done and to share that work in a meaningful way, not do it because I'm chasing some algorithm to make me popular on a platform that isn't actually serving my original purpose, which is to tell stories, right? In written form. So, all right. Thanks for hanging out with me. I will see you next time. Take it easy.